there's the question of temporality. People tend to think that it's only relevant to rentals, but it's actually something that happens also to buyback and resale products, because you are operating in a world where your business is very tied to the flow of goods in terms of like what's coming in and what's going out, and everything's unique. Tracking timelines and figuring out where assets are and in what condition and when, and being able to kind of take a look to the future and the past is really at the core of understanding not only what's available to, for example, to be booked, but also to understand how long does it take on average for us to like buy back a good until it's inspected, refurbed, and available as a listing in various different sales fronts, and how long does it take for that asset to be then sold, and what was the cost and income. So there's a lot more temporality that connected to many of the circular commerce cases. So that kind of capabilities comes into play, and that, all right, things also need to adjust to the fact that it's not only data being dynamic, but it's data and values living over time. So they're temporal, they change, and you get new data. And then you need to infer things out of that. So whether it's in bookings, it's often inferring like, all right, when is a thing available? But it might be more analytical things like what's the average cost of inspection and refurbishment process for this category of products. Or an example might be logging every hour a GPS location for a rental car, like where is it going and so on. From our perspective as a e-commerce operating system, there's 100 billion different use cases how someone might want to use those capabilities, from that GPS tracking to that availability protection to storing those condition details or inspection details and costs. The only thing that we as a platform kind of can assume is that the user probably stores this information for a reason. And if they make it so that this information is temporal, so it's kind of either a kind of a date range or a booking in time, or it's a note with a timestamp, that also probably is for a reason. Now, it's our job to make sure that if you store that data, it's probably important, so you want to come back to it later in that same temporal context. So you might want to view that data in a timeline, or you might want to fetch it via API to be used in another system, and you kind of just use twice as the like lifecycle record for each one of your items. But again, we don't too much assume a specific use case. We just try to kind of think that, all right, we've made it possible for you to store all of this data with this kind of temporal timeline tracking, and then make it easy for you to then look, edit it, or analyze it, or then use it in another system where you have a workflow that we're not aware of. So I hope this kind of, again, highlights the fact that we've acknowledged, kind of understood that in re-commerce, a key capability for anyone, again, whether you do resales or rentals, it doesn't that much matter, is that you need the ability to be able to store things with a timestamp or a time range that something takes X amount of time. And after that, when you have the capability, you can use it for many things. There's no limit to the use cases that you can then support there, as this timeline then lives with each one of those unique assets that we touched upon earlier. So again, what we've only enabled, which is very, very hard to do, is that you can store unique data for every item if you choose to do so, and this data can evolve and be kind of in the context of time. And then you're at the kind of core at understanding your inventory and product flows in a temporal life cycle, and that's the whole kind of one core concept of re-commerce. Again, I hope that makes sense. It's a bit of a theoretical answer, but this is, again, I think just underlying the fact that if you take that OS approach, you are trying to find the common denominator between a lot of use cases, making those possible, but not dictating how you need to do those use cases.